Fast Forward Productions. The women are speaking.
I think of travel as kind of like playing dress up. You get to try on all these different personas, experiences, and try it out in a new environment and then see what feels authentic and natural to you. It's this opportunity to test it out and try it on and see if it does. And that's one of the reasons I really love traveling, is just this opportunity to kind of play into something that has always been an inspiration or an idea and see if the shoe fits.
Welcome to Brands Without Borders, a travel show that will also teach you how to build a business. I'm your host, Katie Smith, an art director, full-time traveler, and the founder of Dropcap Design. Now let's get into today's episode.
I have spent forever waiting on this leaf blower to end, the sounds to go away, and it's just not going to happen. And luckily, we're a travel podcast, so ambient noise just comes with the territory. So welcome back to Brands Without Borders. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited for today's story topic, 5 things that don't change when you move abroad. I am back home in Birmingham visiting family, staying at my parents' house, all of the nostalgia, and processing the past 6 months in Costa Rica, which, wow, flew by entirely too fast. But it's given me a lot of time to think through what happened. What did I just experience? This is the longest I've ever been out of the country on a trip somewhere that I wasn't permanently living. And it's given me a lot of time to think about what actually has changed in my life in 6 months since being in Costa Rica and what looks the same. I think the first time that I realized that my life is going to look relatively the same no matter where it was in Africa. It was a 6-week trip, and a majority of that time was going to be in the bush. Super remote, no Wi-Fi, no cell reception. It was Maasai land. It was like a tented little community. It was so far different from Dallas. I couldn't have imagined more of a polar opposite. And the first couple of days were great. I relaxed. I read books. I drank coffee. I took in the scenery. I played with my camera. I really took in the experience of being in Africa. And then after maybe, I would say 10 days to 2 weeks, that's when boredom set in. Now, when boredom sets in, that's when you revert back to a lot of your previous ways of being. And I found myself sitting there on my computer, creating a 365-day goal-setting planner that I was going to implement as soon as I got back home. I think it was just my way of processing being in an unfamiliar environment, not knowing what to do with my time, how to be productive. I had tried to go on jogs, but it turns out that you are really not supposed to go running by yourself in that environment with all the animals. I had tried to paint, but it only kept my attention for a couple of days before I just needed something that felt like forward momentum. And in sitting there, stressing out, putting together this basically resource to move me, my business, everything forward as soon as I got home, it really did make me realize that a lot of things don't change when you travel. We have this idea of wanting more freedom in our lives, to see the world, to have new experiences. And then we find ourselves being the same person in a different place. Your problems follow you, your fears about the future, your preferences. There are a lot of things that actually don't change when you travel. It's just that your environment, your comfort level, your scenery does. So today I want to talk about those steady components of your life that no matter where you go, will follow you. So the first thing that doesn't change that I found are your habits. So if you're somebody who doesn't cook a lot at home, you're not going to cook a lot abroad. If you're somebody who doesn't prioritize exercise, you're probably not going to prioritize it abroad unless you don't have transportation and you have to walk everywhere. If you are more of a hermit and antisocial, you will be more of a hermit and antisocial abroad. These little habits, these little tiny ways that we spend our day, we create structure, routine, familiarity. That familiarity and structure And I'm talking about the most micro sense, like how much water you drink, if you read before you go to bed, like how often you wash your hair, things like that. Like these little micro familiarities or patterns, these ways of being that are almost subconscious at this point, they follow you. Now you'll have, again, I do think that there's a difference. There's this like 10-day to 2-week window where anything's going to feel like a vacation. So you're going to be outside of your comfort zone, trying new things. Maybe you're seeing more sights, so you're drinking more water, or you're doing a lot of activities, so you're washing your hair more, or, XYZ. You have like 10 days to 2 weeks where really there are no rules. You are in a new place and you can be anything you want to be. But after that period, I think is when you start to settle into what is your most familiar form of routine. And that's to create some structure, some sense of the days having a beginning and an end, some level of predictability, some settling in, if you will. And your habits, the way that you like to structure your day, goes with you. And for instance, I have always had the most ambitious cooking goals when I travel. And yet I hate going to the grocery store. Hate it. Hate going to the market. Hate the preparation. Love the process, but it inevitably always sneaks up on me, and then something's closed or I don't know where to go, or I'm hungry and I need something faster. And these little micro habits just creep their little way back into your world. Another thing that doesn't change on the habits end is your sense of adventure versus how much you like to be at home. Again, 10 days to 2 weeks, pop off, go to that new restaurant, go see that tourist attraction, go try that new thing. But as soon as that vacation sheen starts to wear off, you will find yourself either staying home and reading, lounging, relaxing, working on a quiet project, or going to restaurants, meeting people, hanging out in the local areas. This was so apparent to me. I had a friend visit. And my days, I like to be relatively quiet. I'm social, but for the most part, I like to have more experiences, a little bit quieter pace, slower pace. I had a family friend visit who could not be more opposite. And it was wake up, go to the beach, go to the coffee shop, meet people, go to dinner, see where people are hanging out. Everything needed to be full and busy and extroverted. And I realized that these preferences that make us feel safe, secure in our flow back home are still the same things that make us feel safe, secure in our flow abroad. And if I'm just completely blown out over socializing, meeting people, having a lot of visual stimulation, lots of conversations, especially like pretty surface level conversations, because those deeper ones don't happen for a while with new friendships, I will feel completely out of sorts. I need to have little things that I work on solo, opportunities to be in my head, opportunities to be creative, to think, to process. Like that is what makes me feel safe and comfortable. And so I'm going to naturally gravitate towards those scenarios once I've settled into a new place abroad. But one thing that does change in the realm of habits is opportunities. So while back home, I might go to a yoga class or the gym. Abroad, maybe I go on a walk in the neighborhood, or I try something, I surf, or something that's an activity that's only available in that area. Maybe, for instance, the whole town in Playa Negra goes to the beach for sunset. And that's a great social opportunity that's not available back home when everyone has different busy lives and there's no one occurrence every day that brings everyone together. So your opportunities to shift, to reevaluate your habits, the way you structure your day, different forms that could take, those opportunities shift as you're abroad, but they don't necessarily change, if that makes sense. So the next thing that doesn't change much is your health and wellness, how you prioritize taking care of yourself. Now, this was so apparent to me last year. I am somebody who has historically been relatively low maintenance. I have 3 brothers. We grew up camping. We grew up roughing it, trying different outdoors activities. I could go days on a camping trip, river trip, and be fine. After Costa Rica last year, I went on a 2-week Grand Canyon river trip. Fine. I have no problem roughing it. but roughing it for 3 months really catches up to you. And so I came back with the rattiest, dreaded, crazy hair. My skin was dry. And I realized that if I don't already really prioritize and really focus on those aspects of my self-care at home, then when it really matters, like when I'm in the jungle or on a river or in the mountains, it's going to translate, or if I'm abroad. And so this time I spent last year really getting my hair, my skin, everything back to where it was after that 3-month window of it just being chaos. And so I really prioritized having a skin and hair routine, having products that are non-negotiables, noticing what gave me skin sensitivities. I have the world's most sensitive skin. I will rash so quickly with any wax. With most products, I have to be so careful what I put on my skin, what I put in my clothes. Everything is a sensitivity. If I get stung by an insect, it inflames. If I eat something that doesn't agree with me, I immediately see inflammation. My hair will immediately absorb every single bit of salt water. So I started prioritizing those things that I noticed the difference the more I started taking care of it. And I also prioritized getting those products, those routine builders in place to take abroad. But it's a habit that I actually had to form intentionally here and bring with me. It's not something that just a shift in location was going to immediately solve. It's also, I noticed that how I handle stress goes with me. So when I get stressed, I get very short-tempered. I tend to be a workaholic because working in my business makes me feel a sense of comfort because it's something I feel like I'm good at. I can see progress. It just feels like this is what needs to get it done, move on. So stress of any kind, I tend to gravitate towards work. That goes with me when I'm abroad. I like to think that if I'm in Costa Rica or in Europe, that I have some kind of romantic activity that helps me unwind. If I'm in Europe, maybe I'll go have a glass of wine. If I'm in Costa Rica, maybe I'll paddle out and surf when I'm stressed. Sure, those things happen from time to time, but I've also become aware that when I'm really feeling stressed, and a lot of the stress that when I'm home, my stress is, business stress or relationship stress or stress about where I'm wanting to be at a certain point in my life. But when I'm abroad, a lot of that stress comes from feelings of loneliness or unfamiliarity or discomfort or just basically having your whole environment change. But your body processes stress. It can't differentiate between oh, this is a stress because I'm feeling lonely and this is a stress because my client's stressing me out, blah, blah, blah. And so the way that you self-soothe translates. So when I'm at home, I self-soothe by let's get these things done. And then I can relax and the stress will be gone because the thing that was causing the stress, I've cleared my plate, basically. So then I can process it, feel the feels, whatever. So when I'm abroad and my feelings of loneliness or missing home nostalgia set in, my body treats it the same way as if it was work stress. So I just think if I can just get through this work, it'll keep me occupied, it'll pass the time, and then I've cleared my plate, I can feel the feels and I can go have fun. And so I have realized that I need to change my relationship to stress and the ways that I cope and self-soothe because those workaholic tendencies follow me. Even if the problem isn't work, even if work is going well, I will still self-soothe through overworking, through prioritizing work, through just digging in and putting in the hours. And it causes me to really miss out on some of the beautiful reasons of why I'm traveling in the first place. So health and wellness really doesn't change much. However, some of the things that do change. One is some of the things that make you sensitive home, like food sensitivities, allergies, etc., don't necessarily follow you. And that's one thing I've loved to see. For instance, occasionally gluten will make me really not feel good at home. But then when I'm abroad, it's not a problem. And it goes into agricultural practices, quality of food. But another thing that changes is it really is just your physical environment, your allergens that trigger you at home aren't necessarily going to be in the place where you're traveling to. So that can be a nice, wonderful release. Another thing that changes is the available tools. So funny story here. I from time to time struggle with insomnia. And one Christmas, I got this vibrating sleep mask. It plays music, it heats, and it does this compression vibration on your eyes to like help release tension and help you fall back asleep. I loved it. It helps so much. I brought it with me last year to Costa Rica because I thought, oh, this will be so great if there are nights when I can't sleep and I need to relax and like relieve tension. Well, for one, a lot of what was causing tension, like overstimulation, too busy of a schedule, the holidays, blah, 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 didn't follow me. So I didn't need it as much, but also just the context of bringing this like kind of funky, clunky electronic gadget to like a dusty jungle coastal town just did not make sense. And that's an environment where those kind of tools just don't work as well. A lot of electronic tools just go there to die. And I've realized that the ways in which I'm taking care of myself might change. For instance, there's this abundance of option in the States for skincare, for literally every need you could ever have. You have 25 different ways to solve it. I go to a rural jungle town in Costa Rica and the same need arises, and yet I don't have 25 options. I might have one. And so it makes you creative. It makes you try new things. And so while that need is still there, you have these opportunities and new methods and new ways of solving it. And part of that's like a wonderful, beautiful way of discovery. One thing that I definitely will be paying attention to before I go back, I had done an Ayurvedic consultation in Costa Rica before I left, and it was wonderful. I learned so much about my body, stress. But one of our clients, one of our drop cap brands, Flourish, Caroline Potter, is an amazing naturopathic nutritionist. She is like my go-to guru when it comes to anything holistic wellness related. And I want to have her on the podcast soon to talk about what she would put in like a wellness toolkit for travel to help solve like common symptoms, items that are difficult to find abroad, that solve like a large variety of problems. So I will have her on soon because health and wellness abroad is very much a topic I'm interested in because your food availability changes, your access to like medicine and supplements changes, your allergens and sensitivities change. I mean, there are a lot of things that go into your body that are different than when you're at home. And so accounting for that, taking care of yourself, it just looks a little different when your variables are constantly shifting, time zones are shifting. So I'm excited about that episode. It'll be a really good one. It will be coming soon this summer. Another thing that doesn't change when you go abroad to live is your work and responsibilities. Unless you are just living the life on an inheritance or taking a sabbatical, you will need to bring your work with you. And I am such a creature of my environment. I'm a designer. So the environment around me, the mood that I'm in, the atmosphere when I sit down to design really affects me. Sometimes I like the busyness and the pace of a coffee shop and going in and feeling super productive and sit down and do the work. But I have all this like ambient noise and conversations and music playing. And sometimes that's what I want. Sometimes I want just a beautiful, quiet spot to hunker down for the day and just not be disturbed and get through my work. At home, I mean, even since being here at my parents' house, my work setup here is phenomenal. I have everything set up. It's so predictable. It's so comfortable. I am so much more productive when I have my full desk set up with all of my little gadget preferences and everything set up just so, and I have my big monitor screen. But abroad, that's not necessarily the case. And in episode, 5, I talk a lot about what I pack in my bag and how I take my work setup with me because it looks different because everything has to be portable. It can't just be all of these like standalone items. I can't bring my big monitor computer with me everywhere I go. I can't bring different like light setups. There's just a lot of items that have to get left behind that I really get used to when I'm working back in the States. And so I have had to learn how to be a little bit more flexible and creative And I even talked about in that episode, there was this time where my laptop the charger stopped charging. And so while I was waiting to get a new charger, I had to convert my iPad into a computer with like my Bluetooth keyboard and all that stuff. It was kind of a nightmare. But I have had my responsibilities, my pace, the expectations that my clients have of me, that you guys have of me for content that I have of myself, those all transfer. But a lot of what's available, the environment, the time zone, the capacity shifts. And that has been a huge adjustment because a lot of times that shift, when there's not enough buffer, enough white space, enough grace, creates stress. And then with stress, you just go into a cycle and then you feel like you have even less capacity and you're not in your flow. So the work, I would say, the biggest thing that I have had to learn is that the work responsibilities, the pace, the structure that I've set up for myself here goes with me. So if I'm not wanting to work 15-hour days, I don't need to be creating a business that requires me to. If I'm wanting to step in, step out, have a team, have some things batched, create more space for when I'm abroad, then I need to be using my time here I had gotten in this kind of bad habit of doing the bare minimum when I was traveling or abroad and then coming back and trying to like play catch up. And I had never actually solved the problem of the fact that I was building a business that required 60-hour weeks. And so I was fine with 60-hour weeks when I was home and like just seeing family here and there and kind of resting and getting ready for the next trip. But now that these trips are so back to back, I'm realizing that window of like catch up is smaller and smaller. And really what I'm wanting to do is create more buffer in my life. So no matter where I am, I have the space to be present, to fully take advantage of it and not just in this constant game of catch up. Another thing that does not change when you go abroad is the sometimes unrealistic expectations that you put on yourself. I don't know about you, but I am someone who loves to anticipate an experience. And then I will set extremely unrealistic expectations for what I will gain from that experience. For instance, packing to go to Costa Rica in January. I wrote a list of goals. I'm going to become fluent in Spanish. I'm going to surf every single day. I'm going to complete 15 paintings on top of my business goals, on top of wanting to do yoga every day, on top of wanting to have a better morning routine, to go on a walk every morning, to start a podcast. It's like all of a sudden, these hobbies, these things that we're supposed to add to my life are huge pressures and unrealistic expectations for what I could actually fit in. I had like predetermined my days to such an extent that there's no room for play, for adventure, for spontaneity. Even coming back home, I was like, oh, I want this, structure in my life back home. I'm going to have all these rules and all these things that I'm going to make sure that I do. And then it leaves no room to have night with my brothers or to take a weekend trip or to sleep in a little bit. So having this tendency to set really unrealistic expectations for what I can accomplish, what I can set out to do, that's something that definitely has traveled with me that I've been working on, telling myself like, you have room for one new hobby or you have room for 2 new hobbies here. You can't reshape everything and have any space for the already existing commitments that you've made. Another thing that I've noticed is this tendency towards wanting to cram too much into the schedule. So regardless of if you travel, if you're at home, we are all, for the most part, guilty of overcommitting socially, with work, with our own habits and routines, with what we can accomplish in a day, in a week, in a weekend. The same as traveling. You go to this place and you have this mentality of like, this is the only time I'll ever be here. I have to do everything. This is the only time I'll ever be in Switzerland. I need to do every single thing and I don't want to miss anything. And I don't want to leave having not experienced like the full potential of this place. After a couple of those trips, you will quickly realize that nothing is worth exhausting your schedule and your experience to fit every single thing in. It's so much better to thoroughly enjoy, appreciate, consume 2 to 3 experiences than 10 to 15. Your body just can't even process that many stimulations, that much change and consumption. And the same goes with your day to day with your clients. It's like less but better. Don't do everything. Pick the 2 to 3 things that would mean the most to you, that are true to your personality, that are things you're actually interested in. It's not a matter of checking every single thing off the list that anyone has ever done in this place. It's finding the 2 or 3 things that you want to do that make you excited about it. I would even say that this translates a ton to business. You don't need to start a blog and a podcast and a course and coaching and blah, 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 just because everyone else is doing it. Find the things that are a natural fit for you, that you want to put your time into, knowing that everything you commit to is going to take your resources, your time, your energy. I mean, for one, most people can't afford to do every last experience in a place or have the time or have the mental energy. And so I have definitely learned that this feeling of missing out, of not taking advantage of an opportunity and regretting it later, translates to so many different aspects of life, but is so apparent when traveling, because I think that's where we feel like we're missing out on things. But that lesson in choosing what works for you and not having the scarcity mentality of I'll never be here again, but this thought of if I love this, I can come back. If this was a great experience for me, this will always be here. I should just come back another time. It releases that pressure and it allows you to really feel grateful and fully embrace the things that you've chosen for the present moment. Another thing that doesn't change when you're abroad is how you form community and make friends. Now, this was episode 6, so go back and watch my guide to making new friends in a new place. But I have found the way that you naturally form community, form relationships, form friendships very much translates abroad. So for instance, in Dallas, I was very much committed to the neighborhood coffee shop. I went every day. It's where my friends were. We would sit around the table, share stories. We would linger for a long time. I knew everyone that worked there. I felt very much like in the hub of that coffee shop. When I went to Montana, I remember it was one summer where I was like, the thing that would bring me the most joy is a weekly friends family dinner where it was potluck style. And we knew that no matter how the week turned out, how busy we were, what plans we had, he was in and out of town, that there's this one social event that didn't change. And so I created family dinners. It was a weekly Thursday night potluck, the same crew. Some people would flow in and out. And it was just this like standing social commitment that helped me when like my Monday or Tuesday was really stressful, or I hadn't really seen anyone for a few days, to not feel like I had completely lost connection with my friends, because I knew this event was coming up in a few days and we could reconnect then. So being in Costa Rica, where you would think your community will change because, you know, there aren't as many people from the same country as you or the same background, or you don't share the same activities, or you're there such a short amount of time. Not true. I found myself fully committed to a local coffee shop where I would sit, linger. I knew everyone who worked there and have my coffee and meet my friends there. Direct tied to how I formed community in Dallas. I found myself planning dinner parties, having people over, potluck style. We shared a lot of our like native recipes, like foods that we loved from home. Family dinners from Montana naturally translated to Playa Negra. So a lot of these tactics that you pick up over time of like, oh, this is one thing I love doing with people. Maybe it's a book club. Maybe it's a running club. Maybe it's going out for a drink at night. Maybe it's going on a like zip line or adventure excursion and meeting people along the way. Maybe it's a co-working space. The ways that you've met people along the way are going to translate from place to place. I am telling you, from here on out, every single new place that I go, I will find the local cafe, the spot everyone goes to, and I will sit my ass down there at one of the tables until I meet the staff and meet some of the other regulars. And that is always and forever how I will make friends in a new place. So a lot of that does not change at all. So now I want to quickly tell you a few things that do change. One thing that does change, it's not a bad thing, but the things that you care about, the problems that you feel like you have in one place don't always follow you. There's a reason that they call it running away from your problems. And it's because, for instance, the tension around the politics in the US I couldn't give a shit about it when I'm in Playa Negra. Some of the little relationship petty drama, you just realize that it's stupid and doesn't matter and is unimportant when you leave. I mean, there were like little petty disagreements and stuff when I was leaving Montana. And after even just a few months in Playa Negra, I was like, so boring, so unimportant. All of these perceived slights and social hierarchy or little dumb things that happen in tight-knit communities over time really stop mattering when your environment shifts. It's also a great way to process a breakup because time and space really helps put things in perspective. It solidifies some friendships. It lets others fade away. So travel has shifted my relationships quite a bit, but I would say it's like weeding out the good one. As a little acquaintance friends that you'll see out, maybe you do a few activities together and you really enjoy their company. But as soon as you're not in the same place, they just kind of fizzle. Happens when you travel a lot, but you start to actually find that there are some unexpected, consistent friendships that stay over time. And sometimes it's the least expected ones. Sometimes it's someone that you had only a handful of interactions with, but you just stay in touch when you travel because it turns out that your lives look similar. Another thing that does change when you go abroad is your view of yourself. And I think this is where one thing that doesn't change is how you set unrealistic expectations. So like filling your day. But then what does change, and I think this is what we're trying to do by filling our day, but what actually happens is the way that you see yourself changes. All of your little flaws, all of your potential, seeing yourself through the lens of a new group of friends, new communities, new cultures, what comes naturally to you, what you struggle with, little insecurities, little social quirks and weird habits and weird preferences. You see yourself through a new lens with all of this new information and unfamiliarity because the one constant in all of that is you. I think of travel as kind of like playing dress up. You get to try on all these different personas, experiences, and try it out in a new environment and then see what feels authentic and natural to you. So you might go to France and have this like luxury feminine aura and try it on for a while and then think, nah, this doesn't really fit me. But it's this opportunity to test it out and try it on and see if it does. And that's one of the reasons I really love traveling is just this opportunity to kind of play into something that has always been an inspiration or an idea and see if the shoe fits, as you might say. And another thing that changes is the way that you view the world and the way that you view your business. For the longest time, when I was just working in Dallas, you start to just emulate what you see around you. But when your environment is constantly changing, your worldview is constantly changing. You're seeing new businesses, new ideas, new ways of doing it. And with all of this new data and information, you start to view your business through a new lens. You start to view your work habits, your environment, your dreams and desires through a new lens. I mean, I remember having this little spark of a dream to write stories and be a journalist 8 years ago. And it's something that just lived in the back of my mind. And as I've traveled and as I've seen new places and lived there, it's only grown and shaped and shifted. And it's a huge reason why I started this podcast show in the first place, was just this desire to share my experiences and stories and hone that art of storytelling a little bit more. And so you'll see that these little dreams, these little thoughts that you've had for the longest time really get shaped and nurtured as you go, and your view on them changes as well. So I hope you enjoyed this little episode on things that do not change when you go abroad. I would love to hear what doesn't change for you and any questions that you have. So if you could drop a comment or leave a review, I love hearing from you and would also love to hear any ideas that you or questions that you have for future episodes. You can DM me over on Instagram at Brands Without Borders Pod, and I would love to connect with you and hear from you. And I hope I will see you next time.